Right, so when your project is done, it comes time to create a stereo master or a mono master that you're going to submit for, for credit or, to actually listen, share on the internet, whatever you want to do. So we've got our project here. The one thing I would recommend you do before you bounce to disk is to zoom out and make sure that you've cleaned up your workspace. What I've seen a lot of people do is they're working on their project and they drag files in, drag files out. They're kind of using this as a scratch pad, and then they inadvertently bounce. They have their project, and then there's a few seconds of silence, and then all these random clips start to play. And that's stuff that people didn't intend to turn in, but they just didn't clean up their workspace. So use the command bracket to zoom out, and just zoom way out of your workspace and make sure that, the stuff that you intended to bounce is the only thing that's in your timeline. If there's extra stuff there, just take a second and delete that and clean up your space before you do your bounce to disk. And command right bracket zooms you in. So there we are. All right, so I can choose to double click on a region and then shift click on the first region. So if I click on my first region and then double click on my last region while holding shift, that will select all of my files from beginning to end. That's one way to set the kind of limits around what we're going to record. The other would be to go up to the ruler and actually click in the beginning of the ruler and then click to the end of the ruler. And that's another way of setting the region that we're going to bounce. Once you're happy that you have just what you want to bounce selected, you're going to go to File, Bounce to, Disk. That brings up a dialog box. It's going to ask you, what do you want as the bounce source? Well, all this time you've been monitoring your main mix, your left-right mix. So it's a safe assumption that that's actually what you want to bounce to disk. That's just basically saying the left-right stereo master. You have an option here for file type. So if you are going to change right now to share it on MP3 or AIFF or anything like that, here's a chance for you to actually convert at your bounce. But I suggest that if you had set up your session as a wave, you should probably also bounce as a wave. Your format, this is important. Mono will give you an individual mono track. Multiple mono will give you two audio files, a stereobounce.l and a stereobounce.r. So you actually have two files here. That may be useful if you're going into a video editor, but if you're going to submit something for credit, it's probably going to increase your likelihood of losing a file, so I wouldn't do that. I would more recommend that you use interleaved, which is going to create one file that is both the left and right stereo channels. Again, your bit depth, your professor should probably give you a guide for what their expectation is. What are they expecting you to turn in? In our case, we set up a session that was 16-bit 44.1, so we're going to bounce as a 16-bit 44.1 because I know that wave 16-bit 44.1 is what the radio station wants for anything to play off their automation server. That's all we need to do. Now we're going to click bounce. It's going to ask us, where do you want to save it? This I would not put into your audio files. This I would put into your main project so that you end up with your main project, and then if you click on your main project, even though it's grayed out, that will copy your main project name right up here into the Save As. So now, if I click this, I will click Save. It will play in real time. We have to sit and wait while that plays down. All right, so once that file is done, let's just take a look in our project folder. So now the nice thing that we have is we have our original Pro Tools session that ends with .ptx, and here is our bounce. So it's got the same name as our project, but it ends with .wave, right? Or whatever it is that we've got, .AIFF. And that's it. So now you've got, within your project folder, you've got everything that you need to turn in. You've got your Pro Tools session, all of the affiliated audio clips that went with that session, and you've got a stereo master that you can share with anybody. And this stereo master is what we'll use as the source material if we were going to burn a CD, and we'll cover that in a separate tutorial.